Come in. Sit down a moment. I just want you to listen. But because I've lived through something that I think you need to hear, especially if you're sitting somewhere tonight feeling like the road ahead has finally run out. My name is Arthur Calloway. I'm 83 years old, and until about 4 years ago, I was completely and utterly convinced that my best days were behind me. I want to tell you about the thing that saved me, because it wasn't what I expected. Not even close. I had a good life. I want to say that clearly because this isn't a story about a man who suffered in extraordinary ways. I wasn't a soldier who came home broken. I didn't lose everything in a single terrible moment. My life was ordinary. And somehow that made it harder to explain what happened to me somewhere around my 79th year. My wife, Eleanor, passed in the spring of 2018. 47 years we had been together. 47 years of her voice in the kitchen in the morning, of her reading lamp on late into the night, of her hand finding mine without either of us thinking about it. And then one Tuesday in April, quietly, she was gone. I stayed in the house. Our house. I told myself I was fine. I told my daughter I was fine. I said the word fine so many times that year, it started to lose all meaning, like repeating a word over and over until it becomes just a sound. The truth was that I had stopped. Not dramatically. Not in the way people worry about. I just stopped reaching for anything. I woke up. I made my coffee. I sat in the same chair by the same window, and I watched the hours move. I wasn't living exactly. I was just waiting. Though I couldn't have told you what I was waiting for. That went on for a long time.
My daughter, Claire, she's patient. More patient than I ever deserved. She'd call every Sunday, come by on holidays, bring the grandchildren, and I'd smile and pour the lemonade, and everything would look fine from the outside. But she knew. Mothers always know their children, and children, if they're paying attention, they know their parents too. One afternoon she came by unannounced. It was a Thursday. She walked in, looked at me in my chair, looked at the stack of unread mail on the table, looked at the garden through the back window, Eleanor's garden, which I hadn't touched in over a year, which had gone completely wild, and she didn't say a word about any of it. She just sat down across from me and said, "Dad, I found something I want you to try." I almost said no before she finished the sentence. I was 79 years old. I had tried things. I had lived things. I didn't need something new. But she had driven 40 minutes to sit in that chair. So I listened. What she brought me wasn't a book. It wasn't a medication. It wasn't a grief counselor or a senior center or a yoga class. The Lord knows people had suggested all of those. She brought me a small bag of seeds. Vegetable seeds. Tomatoes mostly. Some herbs. A packet of sunflowers. She set them on the table next to my coffee cup and said, "Eleanor always said you had the better hands for the dirt. She said you just never tried." I stared at those seeds for a long moment. And then, because I didn't know what else to do, and because my daughter had driven 40 minutes, and I loved her,
I said, "All right." Now, I want to be honest with you. I did not walk outside that afternoon and feel transformed. There was no lightning, no sudden rush of meaning. The first day I went into that garden, I lasted about 20 minutes before my knees complained too loudly, and I went back inside. The ground was harder than I remembered. Eleanor had always made it look effortless. The second day I lasted a little longer. The third day I found one of her old gardening journals tucked under the potting bench, just a small notebook spiral-bound with her handwriting inside. Notes about what she'd planted, what had worked, what the soil needed, little observations she'd made over the years. There was a sketch of a bird she'd seen one morning, a pressed leaf taped to a page. I sat down right there in the dirt and I read every word of it. And something happened that I hadn't felt in a long, long time. I felt curious. Not about the seeds exactly, not even about the garden, but curious about what might happen next. Curious about whether I could do what she had done. Curious about what I might find in that soil, in that space, in the quiet of being outside with my hands in the earth.
That was it. That was the whole thing. A flicker of curiosity so small I almost missed it. But I didn't miss it. I kept going out there every morning. Sometimes for 20 minutes, sometimes for 2 hours. My knees stopped complaining as much, or maybe I just stopped listening to them. I made mistakes. I planted things too close together. I watered too much. I lost a whole row of basil to something I still don't fully understand. Eleanor's journal didn't cover everything. But by midsummer, the tomatoes came in. I'm telling you, I stood in that garden on a July morning at 79 years old, and I looked at those tomatoes, red and warm and ridiculous in their abundance, and I started to cry. Not from sadness, from something else. Something I didn't have a name for at first. I finally understood it later. It was the feeling of having participated in something again, of having put my hands to something and waited and tended and shown up and then watched it become real. I had forgotten what that felt like. I had forgotten that I was still capable of it. I had forgotten that the ground could still respond to me. I'm 83 now. The garden is considerably better than that first year. I've learned what I'm doing, more or less. Eleanor's journal is held together with a rubber band at this point because I've read it so many times. And I've added my own pages to it. My own notes. My own observations. My own sketch of a bird I saw one morning. A cardinal, sitting on the fence post like it had an appointment. I keep the journal in the house now, not tucked away, right on the kitchen table. My grandchildren have started asking about the garden. My grandson, who is 11 and skeptical of everything, came out with me last spring and planted his own row of sunflowers. He checked on them every day he visited. When they bloomed, he photographed them on his phone and showed all his friends.